he saw firsthand how prevalent fentanyl was. And that was the conversations we had toward the end over and over, was just, how could you do this when you know that it's in all of these drugs? And so that's the insanity of addiction, right? Duffy knew from his job how dangerous this was, but he thought he had it under control.
The party. It's a leaf party. It's like you want to smile, but you don't know.
Duffy was introduced to drugs when he was in high school. He hurt his back and had an injury that led to him being prescribed Oxycontin. And the progression of the disease of addiction, especially with opiates, is that it's too expensive to maintain that. And they don't even realize they're addicted until they start getting dope sick. And they end up going to something that's cheaper that they have access to. So people will go to heroin, but that's really where it started for Duffy. And he struggled with it for many years. So Duffy and I met and started dating pretty quickly. We were together 3.5 years. We met in recovery and we built a life together. We got our own place. We had our son. We were super grateful for everything that we built because we'd been through so many ups and downs and lows in our lives. Duffy had a few periods of sobriety. One was for 4 years, and then he relapsed and then got sober before I met him. So he had about a year when we started dating. And then he relapsed about 1.5 years into our relationship. I was definitely aware that Duffy was struggling. He was very depressed. He had some seasonal depression going on. We were both working really hard. He was working 2 jobs. I was working a new job, many hours, having a toddler. And then my dad was sick and ultimately passed away in December of 2020. And so that winter is when things really started to unravel for him. And he tried to get in with a therapist and he didn't connect with her. She was very inexperienced. He stopped going, didn't continue. And it eventually led to him going back to drugs. And he tried to stop and he wanted to stop, but he couldn't. He would put together a little bit of sobriety time and then relapse again. And it wasn't pretty. Duffy's job was a peer support specialist. So what that looks like is somebody comes into the emergency room after a drug overdose when somebody's been Narcaned, and they meet with that person. And Duffy met with those people who overdosed and speak from his experience as somebody in recovery to say, I've been where you are over and over and over again. And that was what would get people to want to get help. And so, I mean, he saved people's lives and I was so proud of him. And he was so amazed to be able to do that as a job with everything he'd been through and turn his pain into purpose. And that's the insanity of addiction, right? Duffy knew from his job how dangerous this was, but he thought he had it under control. And the last day that I saw him, we were in an argument about him going to treatment. And he thought he might lose his job. He was fearful to reach out and admit that he had been using and get help. You know, the stigma, even for people in recovery, is strong. And that was the last time I saw him alive. And he was going to come home. He promised he was going to come home, and he got drugs one more time. And that was what had the fentanyl in it that time. And he was without oxygen for too long before the ambulance got to him. They couldn't Narcan him because nobody had Narcan around. And he had severe brain damage. So he was on life support for 3 days before they actually declared him brain dead. Duffy's best friend also passed from a fentanyl overdose 6 months after he did. And he was my son's godfather. So he has gone through some emotional ups and downs, but now he's in a really good position. He's very happy and seems to be on a better track, but this is going to be a lifelong thing. So as he gets older, I'm going to feel it out and see what makes sense, but I'm going to let him know that his dad was sick, that he was heroic in his own way and saved lives, but that he struggled with this illness, and explain fentanyl to him. Fentanyl is terrifying. It keeps me up at night. It makes my stomach turn. So I think we all need to know what fentanyl is, what it's in, and educate the people around us, because it's a public health crisis and we all need to carry Narcan. And the other part of it is the borders. And I don't want to make it political, but it's just a fact. This is coming in over the borders, and the border policies are failing. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't have a face. It is everybody. It stems from trauma. It stems from mental health issues. It stems from pain. And so to treat this as some type of moral failing, to me, is mind-boggling, when it's really a medical issue. It's not like we grow up and say we want to become an addict. That was never something in my life that I thought I would be. You can't make anybody get help. You can't save anybody. You can't force them to get treatment, but you can love them and encourage them. Just love them through it as best you can. And I know that they'll make it really hard to do that. And I say that from experience.